Where do you want me to stand?
Over here a little bit. There you go. Perfect.
Welcome everyone to the Will County Progressives. I'm Susanna Ibarra. I'm the vice chair of the organization, and we just have a few announcements. We are walking in Frankfurt Fall Festival, marching in the parade, so the Frankfurt Dems. The step off is at 1 o'clock, and we have some more information on our website about that. Also, the Will County Progressives are one of the co-sponsors of the Illinois Gubernatorial Candidates Forum. It is at the Chicago's Teachers Union in Chicago. And it is October 8th at 12:30. So if you're interested in that, find more information also on our website. And I do have a special presentation for Rebecca. It is Rebecca's birthday.
Happy birthday.
And she does so much for the Democratic Party and so much for the Will County Progressives. So I want her to step in front of the camera. And Mr. and Mrs. and Mr. Lorch had some gifts for you. So your blackberry jam and some yummy things. And also, this is from all of us. Uh-oh, something's falling out. And your card. Thank you for all that you do. We love you so much. All right, clap for Rebecca. And I have a special guest who would like to speak. I'll let it be a surprise what she's talking about, but her name is Mrs. Rachel Ventura. Let's have a warm round of applause.
Thank you. Most of you guys know me. If you don't know me, my name is Rachel Ventura. I recently ran for Joliet City Council at large. And with the primaries coming up, the Democratic primaries, I plan to run for Will County Board District 9. So I would like you guys' support. I have a website, I have Facebook right now. We'll get a website going soon. If you're interested in walking, phone banking, sharing my site, all of those things help. And of course, we'll have a fundraiser and we'll let you know all about that. So thank you very much.
Okay, just a few more announcements. I'm Rebecca. I'm the treasurer of the Will County Progressives. We have just a couple of things. We have members with the Unitarian Universalist of Church of Joliet does a monthly social justice film. And this month, on September 7th, they will be showing After the Spill, which is about the spill in the Gulf. Oh, here's the blurb. 10 years ago, Hurricane Katrina devastated the coast of Louisiana. 5 years later, the Deepwater Horizon exploded and spilled more than 200 million gallons of oil in the Gulf of Mexico, the worst ecological disaster in North American history. Amazingly, those aren't the worst things facing Louisiana's coastline today. It is that the state is fast disappearing through coastal erosion caused largely by oil and gas industry activity. So if you're interested in seeing the film, it's free, it's donations accepted, and it's at the Universalist Unitarian Church in Joliet down on Jefferson, just past Essington. And they do this every month except in the summer months, so definitely worthwhile. Another quick announcement on September 18th at 7 p.m. The Village of Plainfield, their village trustees were meeting. There's two issues. Some of you may know about them. At the last village board meeting, they tabled a discussion to the final permitting process for the Muslim center there. So we're encouraging folks who want to support the Muslim community. They bought this old church in Plainfield, and they're having some issues, so they could certainly use your support. The other folks who could use your support on that same evening at the village is the Plainfield Park District, who are building a recreation center at Ott Park, and our final permitting process also got tabled. So we would love to have you come out if you think parks and recreation centers in Plainfield and Joliet are a fine idea. We would like your support that night as well. So please join us, and you can see me or you can see our Facebook for more details on the wheres. And then the last thing before I introduce our presenter tonight is I was just given this letter that was printed today, Paul?
On the 29th.
On the 29th of August. Some of you may have read it. It was a letter to the editor that John McCain wrote, and it's quite fascinating. Would you like me to read it?
Yeah.
I will. So John McCain, it's time Congress returns to regular order. Americans recoiled from the repugnant spectacle of white supremacists marching in Charlottesville to promote their un-American blood and soil ideology. There is nothing in their hate-driven racism that can match the strength of a nation conceived in liberty and compromising 323 million souls of different origins and opinions who are equal under the law. Most of us share Heather Heyer's values, not the depravity of the man who took her life. We are the country that led the free world to victory over fascism and dispatched communism to the ash heap of history. We are the superpower that organized not an empire, but an international order of free, independent nations that has liberated more people from poverty and tyranny than anyone thought possible in the age of colonies and autocracies. Our shared values define us more than our differences, and acknowledging those shared values can see us through our challenges today if we have the wisdom to trust in them again. Congress will return from recess next week, facing continued gridlock as we lurch from one self-created crisis to another. We are proving inadequate not only to our most difficult problems, but also to routine duties. Our national political campaigns never stop. We seem convinced that majorities exist to impose their will with few concessions, and that minorities exist to prevent the party in power from doing anything important. That's not how we were meant to govern. Our entire system of government, with its checks and balances, its bicameral Congress, its protections of the rights of the minority, was designed for compromise. It seldom works smoothly or speedily. It was never expected to. It requires pragmatic problem solving from even the most passionate partisans. It relies on compromise between opposing sides to protect the interests we share. We can fight like hell for our ideas to prevail, but we have to respect each other, or at least respect the fact that we need each other. That has never been truer than today, when Congress must govern with a president who has no experience of public office, is often poorly informed, and can be impulsive in his speech and conduct. We must respect his authority and constitutional responsibilities. We must, where we can, cooperate with him, but we are not his subordinates. We don't answer to him. We answer to the American people. We must be diligent in discharging our responsibility to serve as a check on his power, and we should value our identity as members of Congress more than our partisan affiliation. I argued during the healthcare debate for return to regular order, letting committees of jurisdiction do the principal work of crafting legislation and letting the full Senate debate and amend their efforts. We won't settle all our differences that way, but such an approach is more likely to make progress on the central problems confronting our constituents. We might not like the compromises regular order requires, but we can and must live with them if we are to find real and lasting solutions. And all of us in Congress have a duty in this sharply polarized atmosphere to defend the necessity of compromise before the American public. Let's try that approach on a budget that realistically meets the nation's critical needs. We all know spending levels for defense and other urgent priorities have been woefully inadequate for years, but we haven't found the will to work together to adjust them. The appropriators can't complete their spending bills, and we're stuck with the threats of government shutdown and continuing resolutions that underfund national security. A compromise that raises spending caps for both sides' priorities is better than the abject failure that has been our achievement to date. Let's also try that approach on immigration. The President has promised greater border security. We can agree to that. A literal wall might not be the most effective means to that end, but we can provide the resources necessary to secure the border with smart and affordable measures. Let's make it part of a comprehensive bill that members of both parties can get behind, one that values our security as well as the humanity of immigrants and their contributions to our economy and culture. Let's try it on tax reform and infrastructure improvement and all the other urgent priorities confronting us. These are all opportunities to show that ordinary, decent, free people can govern competently, respectfully, and humbly, and to prove the value of the United States Congress to the great nation we serve. Thank you, John. All righty, so with that, I want to introduce my friend, Bill Thoman, who has a long personal history with solar energy, starting apparently as a nerd child, doing all kinds of science experiments, and he has brought some of his wonderful adult nerd science experiments for us to play with here. He's going to talk about his journey as well as kind of help folks who are looking into solar with his pitfalls, so we avoid them, and figuring out all the monies that we can get back from the government for doing this as well. So with no further ado, Bill Thoman, Solar-palooza.
I've got a handout. I think it's one on most every table, and I didn't have a lot of print in there. I do have some definitions in the back, and we'll talk about those as we get into them. But when I was approached about speaking to this group tonight, and I've been to many of your meetings, so I kind of feel like I'm part of the group too in many ways. But I asked, what particular things do you think I should talk about? And it was explained to me that this group appreciates the nuances of issues that they see into the surrounding, if you want to call it political, the myriad of political issues in this topic, and and there are a lot of them. So I said, well, I could do that because I've had to overcome a lot of them and hit a lot of them head on in my journey. Let me talk a little bit, just give you a minute or so of my personal history. I think I became really intrigued with solar cells when I was in 7th or 8th grade. And my science teacher, and I remember his name, Don Roderick, and I lived in Springfield at the time, and he passed around this little tiny thing that looked like a microscope slide, and he said, this is a solar cell, and it produces electricity when you put sun on it. And I thought, how in the heck? And then, furthermore, he said, and in the future, going to power, houses, and it's going to power cities. And I thought, that'll be from this little thing, So I paid attention to him, and that comment, the comments that he made, resonated with me. And being an interesting science teacher, you listen to folks who, in one of their experiments, they have this little 110 volt wind-up generator, and some of you probably remember seeing that in your schools, and had one person hold one side and another person hold the other side, and then they held a fluorescent light, the ends of the fluorescent light, and he cranked on it, and he said, don't let go, because if you let go, you get shocked. So you listen to somebody who puts that out in front of you. My wife has had to put up with my meanderings in solar energy, and when we built a house out in Elburn in 1979, 1980, we were building a house, and she kind of gave me a look when we were building it, because I said, well, I want to put in a supplemental 12 volt system throughout the house. And she gave me one of those looks like she's giving me right now. And we didn't do it, but I said, no, sometime, there's going to be, there's going to be, we're going to have a solar panel on the roof and connect this up as a supplemental or alternative electrical system. We didn't do that. And then we've lived in Plainfield since 1998, 1999. Shortly after that, you know, I think a lot of you probably have sump pumps, and probably a lot of you have backup sump pumps and battery backups. And I said, well, you know, I want a backup system. So I had a battery, and then I saw something on the internet, don't you love it, on how to build a solar panel. So I constructed this thing that was made of plywood and a little plexiglass in there, and my wife let me put it up on the roof, and it powered it charged the battery, it kept it charged, and because then my thought was, well, you know, when the power goes out, you know, we'll appreciate this. And I will say that probably in the 7-8 years that we had that, the power has gone out about 3 minutes in that 7 or 8 years. So I haven't gotten a lot of use out of that. But we went to a breakfast with an installer, and he was trying to get business. But when we went to the breakfast, you know, he had a very compelling presentation about the different types of incentives that could be offered. And that was when we decided then that, well, we thought about it a little bit more, and I think I called him like 6 months later or something like that. Because at the time, there were two big incentives. We ended up putting a 33x6 panels on our roof, and that produces about 9,100 watts of power, and that's quite a bit.
Is that a day or a
It's
month?
it's a 9,100 watt system. In a day, on a sunny day, it could produce 60 kilowatt hours. That's a better reference. But the systems are powered based upon the calculated wattage of the panels. And each of these panels, I think there were actually 305 watts. But the reason we went so big is we had an electric car. So we talked to the installer, and then we learned, and you know, we never knew this ahead of time, but we learned that there were two basic incentives that were being offered at that time. The federal 30% tax credit, which is still in effect right now. And then at that time, which was in 2014, there was a 25% state rebate. So that amounted to 55% of the project would be reimbursed, which was a pretty good deal. We ended up spending around $32,000 on the system, and then our net cost was just under 15. So that made it a little bit more palatable. So those were the basic incentives, and they, you know, they caused us to take the big step and get things going. But there were a lot of barriers on the way, and one of the things, Bruce Rauner took office about 2 months after we had this installed, and he halted the rebates, and we had applied for permission to build this thing and only certain, you had to apply and then you got approved, and it was basically a contract that if you build this, you'll get a rebate from the state. So we built it, and I was this close to filing a suit with the state of Illinois. A lot of good that would have done, perhaps, but and I involved state senators, state representatives, and I think we were probably the last people to get a rebate. And the rebates, are funded not by state tax dollars, but by the electric power bills that you and I pay. And a certain small portion of that is paid into the Illinois Power Agency, and then they have programs that they design to pay for energy efficient programs. So that's what occurred at that time. One of the barriers that we encountered right after we built the system, we had it completed in October of 2014, and Bill is familiar with the hourly pricing program that Commonwealth Edison has, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But so it requires a special meter because it has to record, it has to communicate with ComEd at least every hour, and then calculate the usage that you've had and how much you've produced and when, and then it goes into a database where they keep track of all that, and then it produces a bill or credit at the end of the month. Well, we had this like analog meter that just spins around inside. Well, when my solar array was working on a sunny day, it spun backwards a mile a minute. But I don't know how they did this, but the gears inside still caused the numbers to go forward. So when I was producing 9,100 watts of power, it was actually telling the power company that I was using 9,100 watts of power. So, after about 2 months, and I called ComEd up, and they kept saying the meter's back ordered. They gave me one story after another. Well, we don't know when we're going to have it, but your situation is unique because you've got a solar array and you're on the hourly pricing program. So it's a total of like 2 months. So I made a decision that I was not going to be quiet about this anymore, and I filed a complaint with the Illinois Commerce Commission, which is, it turns out, that's exactly the right thing to do at that point. And I didn't know any of this. I didn't know to file a complaint. My installer didn't give me this insight. I was a member of the Illinois Solar Energy Association. They didn't seem to be wanting to advise me on how to handle this. So I filed a complaint with the Illinois Commerce Commission, and less than 1 week later, in like 10 inches of snow, there was a person out at our house switching out the meters. And so I called the Illinois Commerce Commission. And mind you, okay, you spend all this money on a system. It's functioning, but when it's overproducing, it's not giving you a credit. They're charging you for it because the meter's malfunctioning. So with my complaint, I asked for two things. I said, number one, I want the doggone correct meter. And then number two, I said, I want a credit for the past 2 months of what I estimated I was being overcharged. And so anyway, I called the Commerce Commission and to find out the details. And this was like the new meter had been installed, so I called them to thank them too. And the woman at the Illinois Commerce Commission told me what the representative from Commonwealth Edison said. Their solution to the second part of my problem was asking for the credit for the 2 months of being billed incorrectly. Well, he could have turned his system off. That was their response. So you build this thousands and thousands of dollars of system to turn it off for 2 months. Yeah. So, you know, and unfortunately, I think that that in many ways represents the attitude of ComEd and the other power companies, because people with solar arrays are competition, and their coal-powered plants, their nuclear plants are going to become less and less important. They say they're pro-solar, but you know, don't let them kid you. They're not. So that's something that I learned through the School of Hard Knocks, but I think I'm one of the few people that say it openly, because you know we don't want to offend the power companies. And if the ISEA, the Illinois Solar Energy Association, I'm a solar ambassador, so if they don't like me bad mouthing the power companies, oh well. But they've not. They're not out to make your installation go quicker, but there are regulations that that come into play that do help you out. So we've got the system installed now, and then 2 months after it was installed, we have the correct meter, and things are working great. I wanted to point you to a couple things in my handout. The first few pages, the first meter they put in didn't really tell me exactly how much was going back into the grid. And in April, this past April, they brought out a new and improved meter, and this one actually had a kilowatt hour by kilowatt hour meter reading that told me what I sent to the grid and what I used. And I think the first column is showing the usage, and the second column is showing what's got sent to the grid. The third column is from my power inverter. So I've got an 8,000 watt power inverter, and so that's, you know, you talk about nerdy things. Every morning I get my coffee and I go out to the inverter and the meter, and I take the readings and come back in and enter them into the spreadsheet, and you know. But yeah, the neighbors are kind of used to it too. But it shows that you know, that we're really overproducing now. But in the after those like 3 or 4 pages showing the charts, I've also included some of our bills, some of our electric bills, and I'm kind of spiraling through here because a barrier, which I think that Bill is probably feeling right now, that the first bill, the one from 2015, if you look at the back page of that, the back of that page, and about a third of the way down the left side, there's a thing called the capacity charge. And I think on that first copy of the bill, it's almost $20. And So it's $19.86 or something like that. Okay. That's, when you go in the hourly pricing program, you, after you're in it for a year, they take your personal statistics and you get your own personalized capacity charge. When you first enroll in the program, you get averaged in with your neighbors for a capacity charge. And what the capacity charge means is it's in the hottest day of the summer where the electricity is the most costly, then this is like a surcharge to cover that. So I called them up, naturally, and I said, okay, you got me paying this charge, it's almost $20 a month, and when it's sunny out in the summer, I'm generating electricity. I'm not using electricity. And I said, my neighbors are all using electricity because they've got the air conditioning on. And so I said, can you put me in a group that has people in my situation with capacity charge? Because I said, I don't think it'd be much. And I was told, by comment, well, if you want something like that, you're going to have to talk to your legislator. So what you have to do then, since we started it in November, you have to go through a summer, and then the following summer, June, you get your own capacity charge. So if you look at the next bill, which I think that's like right after we got our own capacity charge, I think the capacity charge on the second page of that bill is like $1.90, something like that. So that's quite a bit different. And again, that's they're not interested in making it a good deal for the solar owners. They're just protecting their interest and their income. And it's pretty much stayed that way. So I'm sure, Bill, do you know what your capacity charge is? Have you seen it?
No, I don't. I should have brought a current bill with me, but I don't know.
Okay, well, you can. It's probably in the neighborhood of that $20.
Yeah, somewhere. I think it is somewhere $18 or $20, something like that.
So next, since he just started the hourly pricing a couple months ago, next June it'll go down because what you experience this summer will then change it starting next summer for you, next June for you. So that was another thing that we kind of learned through the School of Hard Knocks.
Does your delivery charge change because of what you're doing?
Actually, I think you can see on some of the bills that it's some of those charges become negatives because
I mean delivery. I'm not talking about supply. Delivery charge.
I think it's
Yeah, it is negative.
I think most of those charges actually go down or
Yeah, there it is.
below zero.
I thought the delivery charge was a fixed figure for your location. The supply is what you're actually using, or but the deliveries, they're fixed charge to. My understanding is right of their infrastructure costs. Their costs. Unless I'm wrong about it.
I think that's something that in a recent law that they've just changed, and folks like Bill and I are grandfathered in, and I agree. I should be paying for part of their infrastructure. The way the law has changed is that when the number of solar arrays people reaches 3%, I think it is, for people activating a system and I forget what the date is, I think it might be June. Oh, okay. It might be this past June. So when people activate the system as of this past June, then when the number of people, or the energy being produced becomes 3%, then they can go back and readjust some of the charges to collect some of that infrastructure, because they figured in at 3% that they're probably going to need to get that compensation. Well, you can tell when the really important people in the room arrive.
We have a special guest. We're very honored to have her here. She has been a supporter of the Will County Progressives since the very beginning. She has an amazing resume and credentials. She is on the Will County Board right now in District 9, and she is the Minority Whip. We would like to all welcome Ms. Lauren Staley Ferry, who is running for Will County Clerk.
I'm sorry to interrupt, and I just wanted to stop by tonight, but I do promise I will be back because I want to spend some time with you guys. But my name is Lauren Staley Ferry, for those of you who don't know me. I have been coming to a lot of the meetings since the Progressives have come to the area, it's been great to have such an engaged and active group of people. We haven't seen that, and so it's really great to see. I'm on the county board right now in District 9, so serving Joliet, all of Crest Hill, some areas in Lockport, and a few precincts in Homer, New Lenox. I've spent the last 3.5 years on the board, was last year chosen by my peers to be the Minority Whip, really heavily engaged with the caucus, raising funds, finding candidates to run that would be good for the board. Currently on the board, we are in the minority. There are 26 members, and it's a 16-10 split. So we need to find good people to run for office that want to win the majority back on the board, because right now we're in a situation where we can't do a lot. The Republicans have the supermajority. We don't even have veto power, and so we have to find strategic ways to get things done. I am very excited to have the opportunity to run for Will County Clerk. Nancy has done an amazing job in that office, and there hasn't been a Democrat in that office in 80 years. 80 years. So
You need one.
yeah. So this is an amazing opportunity for somebody to get in there and, work really hard and just be able to work with everybody. I'm excited to have that opportunity. There are 420,000 registered voters in Will County, and every election cycle that's growing. And so we need somebody that's going to be innovative and look at ways to, enhance and run things efficiently. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to do that. I'll be back. I wanted to, stop by really quick tonight. Things have been quite the whirlwind, and so I am kind of just trying to be at as many places as I can, talk to as many people as I can, introduce myself. I guess I should do that too. I said my name, but I am from Joliet, born and raised. I live there with my husband and my 7-year-old son. Born and raised there. I spent the last 11 years working at Capital One in operations, so working in process improvement, project management. So I have a ton of experience in that work. That's where I'm really confident in my skills and my abilities to run an office like the county clerk. So excited to be able to do that. Genuinely just really excited to have the opportunity for a Democrat to get elected there. Our right to vote is our right. It's not a privilege. So the election process is something that's going to be huge for us to look at. There's so many things that go on that we can look at enhancements, and it's exciting. So I have a fundraiser next week, Thursday, September 7th at 12 Handles. You're all invited. It's from 5 to 7. 12 Handles is in Crest Hill. Would love for you to come out. We're going to have food and drinks, and just be there amongst a lot of people, hopefully. And then I will be walking in the Frankfurt Parade this Sunday. So I have T-shirts and candy to throw, and I have some lit that I will leave there on the table, so please feel free to take something. It's about me. And if anybody is free, available on Sunday, and would want to walk with me, I'm looking for walkers and people that would, want to just walk in the parade and help support. So thank you so much for having me here tonight, and I will be back again, and we can talk about more issues and things, what we're looking to do in the office.
What time should people be there?
The parade, it's at 11:45. I think the parade is at noon. We're gonna start lining up, 11:30, and I can send the information to Susanna and Rebecca, and they can get the word out if anybody is interested.
What was this date, the 7th, did you say?
The 7th, yep, September 7th, at 12 candles. I have a Facebook page, elect Lauren Staley Ferry for Will County Clerk. I will have a website soon. It's under construction, and that is laurenforclerk.com, Lauren, the number 4, clerk.com. So that should be up and running soon.
When's the election?
The primary is March 20th of 2018.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was nice seeing everybody tonight. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. Susanna, Rebecca, thanks for giving me time.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the bill just 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to go on to some of the more fun stuff. But while Lauren's here, I think I will talk about one of the barriers, at least a mental barrier, that exists with solar energy. I ran for county board last November's election, and so I had gone to a lot of the county board meetings. And in February of 2016, it got presented to the board executive committee that a company was proposing putting solar arrays on the roofs of county buildings. And this was going to be at no cost. And then the county staff went through all the figures and produced a report for the county executive committee, which is a Republican run. And don't anybody ever dare put a thought in there otherwise. And what they told the executive committee was that, okay, this will be at no cost to the county, and we're going to sell you the power that we produce at a lower rate than the utility company would sell it to you for, and which I was going to talk about in just a minute. What the Illinois Power Agency is doing now with some of the energy efficient funds, they're giving it back to solar producers in the form of what's called a solar reclaimable energy credit. This developer was going to give a percentage of that credit back to the county, and the staff calculated out that over a period of 20 years, this would have generated between $1 million and $1.5 million of revenue for the county. And the executive committee chair, his response, and I was at that meeting when he responded, he said, well, what if the company goes bankrupt? We're not interested in this. So that's the kind of closed-minded, narrow thinking that goes on now. And that's just a little sliver of an explanation of why I ran for the county board and why it's important to get good folks to run this next time too. Just these common sense things that can help. I mean, $1.5 million in a $500 million budget. No, it's not that much, but it's $1.5 million you don't have to find.
And it would be a good example.
And as a sideline too, I have the privilege of being a commissioner with the Plainfield Township Park District with Rebecca. And we are building a rec center, and it is going to be the first public building in Will County with solar array. We've applied for a grant to do the solar array and other energy efficiency improvements. So we haven't heard that we're absolutely going to get it, but I'm optimistic, and I think we will. So we're looking forward to that, and full speed ahead. I wanted to, the last of my talk, and then I was going to show you some of the things that I brought that you can tinker with here. If you look at this chart page, and I just printed off a couple of these today, and Bill, I don't know if you spent any time looking at these. They've got an app for your phone too. And, it's an hourly reflection of the price of electricity. And I went back 3 days because the 30th, well, the 31st and this morning actually had prices early in the morning that were below zero. And one of the definitions that I was going to talk about was miles per gallon equivalent, the MPGE. The miles per gallon equivalent for those of us who have electric vehicles, and I put the formula in the definition, but it's basically, it's how much it costs you to charge your vehicle back up to full charge, how many miles you've driven, and then what portion of a gallon of gas that cost is. And you do a calculation, and you get something like 300 or 400 miles per gallon equivalency, so something like that. So, but then, what makes, to game this, call it gaming the system, but it's, if you look at the pattern on these three graphs, you'll notice a general tendency, which almost always holds true, that during the day, the price is high, and at night, the price is low. That pattern holds true 99.9% of the time. On a couple of days, the price has been below zero. In other words, a bunch of these plants around the Midwest have pushed the button to gear up and start producing electricity, and then the grid says, "Whoa, wait, we got too much. We don't need your electricity," so the price goes down. And so when Bill and I set our timers to charge our cars, I set mine to start at 2 a.m. every night. So for like usually 2 or 3 hours, it's charging. And if you look at the cost of electricity for the past couple of days, between 2 and 4 a.m., is below zero. So how do you figure a miles per gallon equivalency when they're paying you to use the electricity because they've got excess they have to get rid of, and they're paying you to get rid of it for them. But the general pattern is what makes having hourly pricing and a solar array perfect for electric car owners, and it makes a good situation. The prices being higher during the day when you've got sun and you're producing, so you're getting credit for it. You're sending that to the grid. You're getting credit for it, and then when you're not producing electricity, you're taking from the grid. At night, the prices are generally lower. So I mean that's it's like when if you were to buy stocks, buy low, sell high. It's the same concept. So that's another benefit, and that's probably a big amount of, or to a great degree, why we haven't seen I think the first bill there for $24 was the last bill, or maybe it's one of those three, but it was from December, last December. That was the last bill that we had to pay so far in this calendar year. I talked a little bit about power purchase agreement, and you could say, well, I don't have $30,000. I don't even have 10 grand that I want to put into this. There are companies out there that if you want to go solar, and you want to provide that benefit to the environment, you can contract with those folks. They'll build the system, and they'll either put you under a power purchase agreement, or they'll lease the system to you. And you'll save on your electricity costs, and you know, I think it's good to help the environment, certainly, because you know, in my case, you know, we drive our car all the time, and it basically it's costing nothing to drive it around, and that we had to design, we had to plan and move forward with that intent to put us in as favorable a situation as possible. And really, we've been quite lucky, and it's turned out to work well for us. I explained also back here what an SREC is, and that's what the Illinois Power Agency is now doing. It's a competitive bid process, and a solar reclaimable energy credit is when my system produces 1,000 kilowatt hours. It's not what I send back to the grid, but when my inverter says, well, I produced 1,000 kilowatt hours. There's a company, and they have access to my inverter, and they keep record of that. And I was just talking to Bill when he walked in. We both got we get quarterly checks. And and everybody, and that's one of the perks that's still in place. About every month with my system, I get about $100 a month from that solar reclaimable energy credits. And that's available to anybody who has a system. So you've got to get with a bidder, and then it's a process. We went through 4 or 6 or 8 months of patiently, maybe not so patiently, waiting for the checks to start flowing, but there were problems within the system. But there are incentives, and with all the incentives that we've been able to take advantage of, people say, well, when is your system going to pay for itself? And we started in October of 2014, and our estimate is about 5 to 7 years, and it will have produced revenue and money to pay for what it costs. The system is warranted, and the cells last 25, 30 years. So we don't know if we're going to be there that long, but the system will be producing productively in that time. Okay, I wanted to show you some of my experiments. I started out, like I said, I built this wooden thing, and it was kind of bizarre looking, but I put it on the roof for a couple of years, and then I saw another video, and I produced this to replace that, and this is the back, and it's complete with there's like an epoxy stuff that you pour in there to a 2-stage thing. You put a clear one on first, and then the second one over the top, and it produces an array like that. If I could have Vanna come down here.
So you made your own panels?
Well, I made a panel. I was going to replace the one that charged my battery on the sump pump, but then we decided to go with the rooftop array. So this, could you hold it like, I don't know. It will produce electricity even in here. Let's see. Okay, with this limited, it's producing about 14 14.5 volts. Turn that off or move it away. And it went down to 11.3 volts. On a sunny day, if you put it out in the sun, this panel produces about 19.5 volts. And you see this, the cells in there. There's 4 rows of 9 cells, and I brought some of the cells that I used. And I swear, I haven't told her before now, so. This was like a hobby thing, you know, and it ended up, this panel ended up costing, and it's like, you know, maybe 2 by 3 feet, something like that. It ended up costing, and it produces maybe about 80 watts. It ended up costing every bit as much as the 305 watt panels on our roof, you know. So it's not something that you do that's really economical. And these, this is the, and probably one of these is going to break, but this is like wafer thin, and if it breaks, you know, that's fine. I'll leave a couple of them out here, and you can pick them up gingerly. But if they break, it's no big deal. But that's what each one of these is, and be careful with that. They will break unexpectedly. And one of the videos, I mean, you must have a lot of time on your hands. This allows you to have some uniformity, and you basically, oops, you know, try not to break it when I do this. Okay, so basically you do something like that, lying flat, and then you do the wiring, and the wiring has the underside of one has to go to the top of the other to get the correct voltage. So I would, and there's a space for 9 panels, 9 cells here, and that's what I used to make that. They suggested this. I don't, you know. They told me I had to make this thing, and this allows you to test the cell. And if Vanna can come around in front here. Okay, so and here, I'll put this over here so that you can. I'll tell you what it reads. This, get it close to that. Okay, this is producing 0.5 volts. So that's roughly the reading. If it were out in the sun, this little cell will be producing about, you know, 0.56 volts. But in here, and so you can see, you know, it doesn't take a lot of sun to activate these things to make them effective. And you saw this produced 14 volts inside here. One of my other solar experiments was I produced, what are they? Well, it was a messenger bag that I attached. I created a solar panel on the outside, and it had a USB thing to charge your phone.
Yeah, I have one of those solar powered.
Oh, you're the one I sold it to.
I have about 3 of those.
Anyway, I tried a variety of solar cells, and this one, I didn't really use these, but let me put this like there. Get it closer. Right there. And this is producing about 0.4 volts. So each one of these produces about a half a volt too. But the difference, and you might say, well, what's the difference between, well, this produces a half volt and this produces a half volt? Why wouldn't you want the smaller one that's encased in plastic and it's a lot more sturdy? I won't do this up and down because it would break. And this produces more amperage. You know, if I were to take for a USB thing, if I were to take 10 of these, and that would make about 5 volts, which is what you use for a charger. The amperage is so low that it would probably take 2 days to charge your phone. You know, so it was a thought. You know, it was an exercise I went through, but it didn't work out so well. Okay. I brought some bumper stickers. If you want one of these, I've got some. It says, "When there's a huge solar energy spill," it's just called a nice day. So that was put out by the Illinois Solar Education Board. And any questions about anything that I've
Have you converted your house over to LED lighting, or are you still right?
Yeah. It's that light bulb that's on that may be the last incandescent light bulb that I own. No, we have a couple left, but probably 90% of our light bulbs have been changed. And that's probably why, if you see the spreadsheet since April to now, and the last page, I included I think it's like 1.6, 1.7. You can see some percentages off on the right. That's the percentage of the multiple of how much more electricity I'm producing than I'm using. So, and early in April, I didn't calculate that out, but it was actually at a rate of twice as much. But in July, the air conditioning, you know, we do use our air conditioner, and that kind of brought it back down. But you know, we use our air conditioner, we charge the car, and we're still doing fine. And
do you have natural gas, or do you use electricity?
We have natural gas, and I wanted to talk maybe a little bit. It's because we at the Park District, we've applied for this grant, and it's up to $1 million. And it doesn't just pay for the solar arrays on the roof, it pays for all types of energy conservation aspects of the building. If we get that grant, I forget where I was going with that.
The gas.
Oh, the gas, yeah. The building has to reach certain standards. And there's net zero standards, and there's an alternative standard called, what was it, something house?
Passive house?
Passive house, yes. The passive house standard, which we have to create the parameters of this rec center to produce, to function under these standards for energy efficiency. They allow natural gas under the passive house. The building, we were originally designing our rec center to be all electric. And the architects and engineers designing this became aware of this other standard. And the rationale is that for the transmission of electricity, there's so much waste in the lines that they justify that you can not use electricity for everything, and thus then it reduces the amount of solar array that you have to have, because you know it's a 38,000 square foot building, and the original standard was that every bit of energy you're going to be producing there, it all has to be electric, and you've got to produce that much electricity during the year. Sure, you're going to be sending stuff out on the grid, but then you're going to be getting it back during the day. So I'm optimistic about that. Yes, Rachel?
Can you give us like the first 3 steps of what we do if we want solar panels on our house?
Talk to a reputable installer about your options. And you know, they can power purchase agreement, a leasing, or outright purchase. We decided we made the plunge. We were going to purchase it because we wanted to get all the benefits back as quickly as possible. But if you go on the ISEA website, I think it's called illinoissolar.org, they have a link with installers that are reputable installers.
So not DIY? I mean, like, I mean, River Freight is selling a 100-watt 3-panel system for about $150.
There's a company in Michigan City, Indiana, that I'm trying to remember their name, but I've got a friend who lives in Springfield who built this house out like half an hour away from Springfield, which is really out in the boonies, and he talked about Harbor Freight too, and I said, no, don't. Well, the thing is, it's too small of a system and it's too high priced. So no, I would not recommend Harbor Freight. If you're wanting like a hobby thing or to on top of an RV or something like that, yeah, absolutely, that's a.
What should we be expecting to pay like per watt? $1?
The price keeps coming down, which is good. And I would be highly speculating if I told you, but they are, well, 9,000 watt system costs us $32,000. And I think it's.
That was 3 years ago?
It's going on 3 years now, yeah.
Minus your rebate.
Yeah, the gross cost and yeah. But I want to say, I thought the price was down around $250 a watt now. That's, but I'm not, don't quote me on that, I'm not shopping for it anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So this, the solar panels cover up your roof, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Does this also, as a result, increase the life of your roof? It's covering up your roof, so maybe your roof doesn't have to be replaced every so often.
Yeah, and we had replaced the shingles about a year or two before this, so it was a fresh roof. And also, I believe that it probably keeps it cooler, because it faces south, so the sun's beating on the solar array, and the sun is not beating on the roof, even though we've got 2 feet of insulation or whatever up there.
But it should increase the life of the roof itself, I imagine.
Yeah, I think
it's covering up the roof. It's like you're putting a cover over it.
Yeah, and there are very few holes in the roof. There are some holes in the roof, but they're designed to be stable. Yes, sir.
What about hail damage?
We've had hail, and we haven't had damage, but it's covered. We checked with our insurance company, and if they get damaged, it's covered under that. And I think it's got a certain amount of wind resistance too, excess of 100 miles an hour. So that depends on the system that you put in.
No, I put my system in September of 10. I paid $35,800 for the system. I still got the check. But there it is, and they've come down in price since then. Since that time. And I can tell you a funny story about meters too. I got a funny story on that one. when we got the system in, all of a sudden the meter started running backwards in the daytime, okay? Second day, the meter ran backwards. The third day, the meter didn't run. Oh, that's nice. The fourth day, the meter didn't run. So, okay, left everything alone, didn't say anything to anybody. ComEd guy come out and he was reading the meter. And I said, oh, that's been like that for the past month. That afternoon, there was a guy out there putting a new meter in.
I did want to comment also, mention about doing it yourself. Okay, we talked about the SRECs, the solar reclaimable energy credits, and there are a number of companies, and the Illinois Solar Energy Association has 2 or 3 choices. When it was time for us to do that, we picked one of the companies, and we've got a 5-year contract. But anyway, my long story about that is that now, there's just been a recent change. Bill's system back in 2010 could have been a do-it-yourself system, and he would have qualified for SRECs, which he does. He's getting SRECs now. But now, do-it-yourself systems will not qualify for SRECs, my understanding. So I think they're trying to raise the standards for consistent quality. I'm trying to think of something about it. Yes, ma'am.
Is there, can this go on any kind of roof, even slate roofs? And
I believe so. If that's why you get an installer, they'll come out and look at where it needs to be installed. And one other thing, I've got one inverter. It's a big box on the side of my house, and all of the panels, that wiring all comes together and goes to the inverter. I was just asking Bill beforehand. He's got micro inverters on each panel. Our installer said, whichever way you want to go. And so a micro inverter, what an inverter does, it converts it from DC voltage coming from the panel to AC. And the micro inverter is on each panel. So if I had on my 30 panels, if I had a micro inverter, then each panel would be inverting the electricity to AC, and then it would all join together in a box down the line. And so that's a different kind of different options. But I think your installer, I have no future plans to become a solar installer, so I don't know all the types of installation, but I think they've got pretty much every kind of roof figured out, what they need to do. And most of them are all very similar in cost. But I think the options for ownership or leasing or purchasing power can make it very attractive to a wide range of folks now. And so I would, are we glad we did it? Mm-hmm. Yep. Sir.
What about snow on your panels in the wintertime?
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a funny story about that, too. I got kids that live next door, and the gentle, wet snow accumulates on the panels. A couple winters ago, I was covered for about a week. And then it was a nice sunny warm day, and I went out there and an avalanche. And the kids next door shocked them. Last winter, I was down about 2 weeks. So, it is a factor, but, the installer proposed to me that my system would produce around 12 to 13,000 kilowatt hours a year, and it's exceeded that. So I mean, they take in, when they do the projections for you, they look at your electric bills, they figure out how much you have used every month, And then it's up to you. I told my installer, I want as big a system as I can put on there to pay for all of my electrical needs. A lot of people just go up to a percentage. I want to cover 75% of my annual electrical usage. It's a matter of personal choice, how much roof space you've got. And the other thing, the advantage of microinverters, my roof faces south. It's just a flat roof. It's an angled roof, but it all faces in one direction. Some people have west-facing little things, parts of their house, and some have east, and anyway, some have different direction. And the microinverters are particularly useful then, because at the end of the day, my solar array pretty much dies off. The sun is maybe 5 degrees up on the horizon. Well, my south-facing panels, they're pretty much given up about them. But if you've got west-facing panels, they produce a lot later. And if you look into the literature, there's if you've ever been in a profession where there's professional journals and people kind of debate back and forth, there's a big debate about south-facing panels, west-facing panels. It's a big debate. You can read a lot about it, and there's no conclusive 100% right answer for that. But, yes?
All right, so kind of 2/3 questions. One of them kind of combined. So if you have one of these estimators come out, one, did it cost you anything to do the estimate? And
No.
two, okay. And then do they let you know where the best south versus west place on your roof is? Or are you kind of, you have to tell them where you want it?
Certainly they
Advise?
They advise you on what's best. In our situation, it was pretty straightforward because we had south facing.
So you don't have to worry about like trees or shadows
Correct.
of other buildings or anything like that?
Yeah, there are no trees creating shadows. But I
Okay.
mean, that is a factor in a lot of places.
So my last question is, what about Tesla and their roof shingles that they're coming out with?
My installer, the guy I used, and I would use him again, and I get nothing back from this. WCP Solar, he's in Naperville. I don't have his phone number, but he's still in business. He's a nice guy, and everything he said he was going to do for me, he did. Completely real, huh?
What about the Tesla?
Okay. The reason I started talking, thank you for, she knows how to bring me back. The reason I started talking about that is that I spoke with him not too long ago, and he said that he was doing an install with some of the shingles, So I haven't talked to him after that. I think it's a particular. It would have to be a particular application that would match that as being most appropriate. Because I think they're a little less efficient than solar panels. And they're changing solar panels all the time. These things right here, and I think the ones that I've got on my roof, they're like 17% effective. And I think they're probably a hair above that now. And they're getting better all the time. Different materials. Yeah.
I think so far we've been talking about it's pretty much voltaic solar power. What's your experience, or what are you thinking about the thermal?
Geothermal?
No, solar thermal.
Thermal solar panels.
I don't know about that. I'm not a source.
Yeah, that's what, I got the same deal you did in the beginning. The state mailed me check so much, and the feds, so I came in later. When I got the check from the state, I put the thermal up. We put the thermal up.
Oh.
And that took the gas bill right down to the bottom. It took NICOR, That's what, the night court truck was out there checking to see if we were looking, jacking out the meter.
Now, by thermal, you run fluids through it then?
What's that?
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's got a heat exchanger in the basement.
Oh, okay, okay.
The solar panels heat, they go down to get the heat exchanger, they bring up the city water from the 55 degrees up to whatever it's going to, whatever you got it set for.
I was considering, and we haven't moved on this and really haven't talked about it, but we've got a natural gas water heater now.
Yeah.
And I was considering putting an electric high capacity in, and that would, I think, it runs, when it turns on, it takes about 7,000 watts. It's a big draw, but you don't use that much. It heats it up and then it delivers it to your faucet, and then it shuts off. But that's, we waited to see what our capacity charge was going to do, and then that went down, and we're still kind of in a holding pattern for that alternative.
Yeah, ours is plumbed into, we have a gas, hot water heater too. But ours is plumbed into the furnace, into the hot air system, across the cold air return. And it operates just like the heater in your car.
Yeah.
You got two thermostats upstairs. The solar thermostat is 2 degrees higher than the gas thermostat. That's it.
The funny story we have about that one is we didn't realize that our water meter had gone out until we had 4 shady days. And then I had quite a surprise one morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Like the batteries, are you storing any of this in battery banks or?
Well, I have a battery backup for my sump pump.
Right.
Which, a lot of people have those. And then, but I also ran a 12-volt, like cigarette lighter outlet in 2 of the rooms on the main floor that I could plug plug-in car inverter into during a power outage, which we've had 3 minutes of in the last 10 years. But I think she was out of town. She went somewhere for the weekend, so I decided to do it.
Okay.
But batteries,
Because that's another Tesla thing that
yeah.
needs working on.
Our grid is reliable enough. My solar array will not work, and yours is probably the same. Will not work unless there's power from the grid. So it could be made to work charging a bank of batteries. I can convert it.
But then you wouldn't be getting these incentives, the comment part of it wouldn't
Yes.
be.
The ComEd part, it works out well for us, and the grid is reliable enough. We don't need to store the electricity to get reliable service. One of the other things, if you're interested in researching that, in Japan, we got a Nissan Leaf, and in Japan, they have a unit that sits in the garage, and it's called, I think it's called Power, the number 2, Home, Power to Home. And this is like, it's a thing that hooks into your, you plug your car in. Well, you plug this Power to Home into your car at night, and then it runs your house. And then during the day, your solar array, it's got to be used with a solar array then charges the car. So theoretically, that's your battery. But no, I would only consider using battery if there was no grid, or if the grid were completely unreliable.
And you'd be able to convert your system to that?
I could. It could, yeah.
Okay.
It could be, yeah. Because what the grid is, it's 240 volts coming into your house, and if you get batteries on a couple inverters, you've got 240 volts, so that's how it wakes the availability up. Yeah.
So if the storms that come through here and it knocks power out to hundreds of homes and everything, say yours was one of the homes that was knocked out, you couldn't use your solar?
Correct, but I would have a light in the family room and a light in the living room. But like I said, we've had storms, and really 3 minutes in the last 8 or 10 years.
Where do you live? Where do you live?
We live in the city of Joliet, Plainfield, out near LA Fitness at West End. So, and underground utilities, so that helps a lot too.
Hey, Bill, we have a gas generator for backup.
That's
A regular gas generator, and that's been in there for almost the same amount of time as the solar has. And all I've ever seen it done is run on Monday morning for 15 minutes to check itself.
My sister has a gasoline-powered generator. She lives in
But this is
Michigan.
natural gas.
Oh, okay. Well, I think theirs is, it might be gas, I don't know, I've never seen it, but they've had to use it probably on the average a week or so every winter. So, I mean, you know, if we were in that situation, it would change our priorities and needs quite a bit, yes.
What kind of car do you have and how much do you drive it?
I've got a 2012, well, we've got 3 cars. But the electric car is a 2012 Leaf. And since we've had it,
Do you need a mud pass?
going on 6 years now. This December will be 6 years we've had it. We've got about 60,000 miles on it. So we drive it a lot. We even drove it to Springfield once. And she laughs because there are charging stations at various places along the way. We drove from Joliet to Dwight. Their Route 66 Museum has a charging station. Then we drove to Bloomington, and they've got a bunch of them. And then we drove to Springfield, where we ended up having to plug into the hotel overnight because they don't have much infrastructure in Springfield. But the trip,
Yeah, I wonder why.
the trip to Springfield took 8 hours. It was, you know, we did it just for fun, and we're not going to do it again. So it's not a vacation car, but we drive it everywhere.
What do you use for heat in an electric car?
Electric heat.
It's got electric heat?
Yeah. To minimize the necessity of using electric heat, they have heated seats and they have a heated steering wheel.
What about the windows?
They have defrost
Electric?
and there's a rear window defroster too. They have front defrost too. I mean, it's got your heat and defrosting. It's just all electric, and it uses your power if you need to use it. If you need to use it, you need to use it. You know.
How long is the battery pack warranty for in your car?
Not long enough. You know, I'm not. That's probably the criticism that I have of the Leaf. We started off with it comes with a 24 kilowatt hour battery pack. You know, number of batteries in there, and we're down now to a capacity of between 16 and 18 now. So I mean, we've lost in the 6 years. We've gone down from 24 to 16 or 18. You know, it hasn't affected us that much as far as what we want to do, where we want to go, but we do think a second or third time sometimes about taking it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, for most trips around, you know, it works fine. But it does have a diminished capacity now.
Would you have to replace the entire pack or just
It's not that a battery cell is going bad, they're just aging. And, I don't want to get into a lot of discussion, but Nissan and I have had some discussions because their idiot meter in the car, I don't think reflects accurately exactly what battery capacity exists, but,
Well, there's new generations of batteries out there since 2012 that are probably a lot more efficient than what yours is.
That is, I think you were probably correct. Yeah, battery technology is coming along, but it's got a long way to go.
They ever give you an idea of what a battery pack costs if you have to replace it?
Yeah, several $1,000s. I had a 2001 Prius, and had over 100,000 miles on it, and I got warning signals, like big time warning signals, with flashing red lights on the display. And the dealer told me that and it had a small battery pack, that in there were probably, say, 60 or so individual little cells, that a couple of them in there were shooting off different voltages. And that's what caused the error. So the dealer wanted over $4,000 to replace this little tiny battery. And then I looked on eBay, they're available on eBay. Isn't everything available on eBay? So I bought a replacement battery pack for $1,000. And then I said to him, I said, okay, what if I bring my own battery pack? He said, oh, it'd be $600 in labor. I said, oh, okay. And then I guess I sounded too enthusiastic because he said, oh, but there's a $200 kit. And right then I knew he was scamming me. So, anyway, they were, because I purchased the detailed service manual. I read how to take the battery pack out and put it back in. And all it is about 3 hours of labor. Kathy helped me get the battery pack out and put the new one in. 3 hours, done. There's no kit. not a kit. So, and then I sold my bad battery on eBay, telling people that there are some bad cells that's shooting off bad signals, but that's what it is. And I sold that for like $250. So my battery ended up costing $750 to replace. With the Leaf, the battery pack is a little more extensive than that, but I think that maybe the not so good side of Toyota came out in that one.
Do you have to replace?
Batteries themselves look just like a AA battery.
Really?
They look exactly like a AA battery.
I had it out, but I didn't want to take it apart because I probably couldn't have gotten it back together.
It comes out in sections. You can drop one section and bolt another section in place.
Well, now I know who
I
to call.
I studied on this. I studied this because batteries look exactly like a AA battery.
And probably the person that bought my bad one probably knew that. That was beyond me. What were you going to say?
I was going to ask you, if you have to replace the batteries in the Leaf, do you have to get the original type, or can you go with a newer type?
I think that they offered a guarantee, which I think that they had planned on never having to make good on, because of their gauge. But they would have replaced it with the newer battery. Yeah, but so yeah, I think they're the same size or compatible. If somebody were to ask, should I buy an electric car, I'd say, yeah, but don't buy a new one. We paid a lot of money for ours, and then the used ones are really very reasonable. Yes?
You know if they use nickel hydride batteries, or if they use?
I don't think they are. I think they're lithium.
Lithium ion?
I think. I'm I'm not confident of that. But I don't think it's,
The Prius was nickel.
could have been.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions from?
I hope you learned something, and I hope I stimulated some interest, and you know, thanks for having me out.
Awesome.
Feel free to come up and tinker with whatever.
Are you guys going to stick around and help people
We're gonna
play a little
stick
bit?
around, yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. Folks, feel free to come up and check out the gadgets.
Yeah, that's a cool.